Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild idea, something that really flips the script on how we think about strength. What if I told you that our greatest power isn't found in winning, but in those moments where we feel totally and completely defeated? Yeah, I know, it sounds nuts, but there's this incredible philosophy that teaches us how to take our absolute weakest moments and turn them into the very key for finding our personal balance. So let me just ask you this right off the bat. What if that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, that moment of defeat, what if it's not a failure at all? What if it's actually the starting line for discovering a power you never even knew you had? The core of this idea is that we shouldn't run away from our breaking points. No, we should actually look right at them. Because buried inside that feeling of giving in, of submission, is what this philosophy calls the most powerful key to unlocking who we truly are. Now, let's be super clear here. This is not about celebrating failure or anything like that. Not at all. It's about finding a very specific tool, let's call it the balance key, that, believe it or not, only shows up when we feel like we've hit a dead end. Think of it like this. When you're forced to yield, when you just have to give in, something amazing happens. Your ego gets shoved out of the way. And for a second, you're left with this raw, totally unfiltered look at yourself. That moment of submission, it becomes this incredibly rare chance for some seriously profound self-discovery. So let's define what we're talking about here. In this context, submission, or ketundikan as it's called in the original source, it has nothing to do with weakness. It's a very specific state, a moment of surrender that actually holds the seeds of a massive personal transformation. Okay, and this is where it starts to get really, really practical. The whole idea is that when we get to this moment of submission, we're not at a dead end. We're actually at a fork in the road, and there are two very different paths we could be on. So check out these two paths. On one side, you have submission to evil, which this philosophy says comes from our own carelessness. So picture this, you mess up big time at work, and the feeling of submission you have is just pure humiliation. The key you get from that is super obvious. I am never, ever doing that again. It's a visible, clear path to avoid that pain in the future. But then you have the other side, submission to goodness. This one comes from what's called guidance, or hidayah. This one is totally different. Maybe you're humbled by some amazing advice, or you have this quiet moment of reflection. You didn't make a mistake. You're just willingly surrendering to a better way of thinking. The key here is hitting. It's a much deeper, more subtle insight about who you are. So to put it simply, one path is a hard lesson you learn from a painful mistake. The other is a gentle lesson you get from quiet wisdom. One is like a blaring alarm clock waking you up. The other is more like a soft whisper. So, what's the point? Where is all this going? Well, this is the most powerful part of the whole idea. It turns out it doesn't actually matter which path you're on, the one from the painful mistakes or the one from quiet guidance. Incredibly, they both lead to the exact same place. That's right. Both keys, the obvious one from your screw-up and the hidden one from that moment of wisdom, they unlock the very same doors. And behind those doors, we find the three pillars of real personal stability: a deeper self-awareness, way stronger self-control, and finally, this incredible sense of self-balance. So, how do we actually do this? It really boils down to three pretty simple steps. First, you gotta just acknowledge that moment of defeat without judging yourself. Then, second, try to figure out which path got you there. Was it a mistake or was it a moment of clarity? And finally, step 3, you consciously use that experience, that key, to unlock a new insight about yourself. You see, this isn't just some high-level, abstract idea. It's a really practical framework. It's a way to completely reframe the toughest moments in life, not as setbacks, but as the actual raw materials we need to build true, lasting personal balance. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to chew on. As you go about your week, just think about this. What moment of defeat in your own life? Maybe something from years ago, or maybe even something from yesterday. What if it's holding a hidden key just for you, right now? What gate is it just waiting to unlock?